So this morning, each pew row, was given a little baggie on the inside of your row. Go ahead, take it out. Pass it around. How many of you know what this is? What is it? Close. It is coriander seed. That's right. How many of you know what this is for? Raise your hand. Does anyone know what it's for? Some of you do, some of you don't. Coriander seed is used in cooking. It is one of the most common spices in the world, believe it or not. It is used in lots of different things to flavor it. Stews and sausage and sweetbreads and cakes. You can use it in curry or chutney. And it's in countries all around the world. It's in Indian food, it's in Chinese food, it's in Middle Eastern food, it's in Russian rye breads, you name it. Sometimes you find it in this seed-like form. Sometimes it gets roasted down and milled into fine powder. But did you know that coriander seed also has some pretty amazing health benefits? It lowers your bad cholesterol and raises your good cholesterol. It controls your blood sugar and helps to fight diabetes. It's high in dietary fiber. It has important omega-3 fatty acids that give us energy and help us to burn calories. It has minerals in it, like iron and copper and manganese and zinc and potassium and magnesium, and it is high in both vitamin C and vitamin B complex. It is used all over the world medicinally for digestive issues, and it virtually has no adverse effects on human health. Isn't that crazy? Heck, you didn't even know what it was! Who would have thought that something so small could give us something so great in return? In fact, the only negative thing I could find out about it was that it's kind of expensive, which may be why some of us don't use it very often. But this super spice might just be a super wise investment. Most of us don't even know it. Investments kind of work like that, don't they? Investments tend to cost us something, which is probably why most of us tend to think twice before doing it very often. By its very nature, investing means that we have to sacrifice something in the immediate for some potential future gain. And in the same way that there is no certainty that eating coriander every day will give our bodies lasting health benefits, there is no certainty in investing. We can't be sure that how we invest our time or our energy or our money or our relationships is going to leave a lasting legacy for the future. All we can do is hope that if we calculate correctly and weigh all the odds accordingly and make informed decisions, we'll be all right in the end. Our scripture today picks up where we left off last week. God is in the wilderness with the starving Israelites and gives them food on one condition: that they save only as much of it as they need. But we know what happens. The Israelites don't listen. And instead of saving what they need, they hoarded what they don't. Because they didn't think that God would come through for them. And what happened to that extra food that the Israelites hoarded? Do we remember? It went bad. That's right. It turned to rot. Well, today we pick up the story on a slightly lighter note with this fantastic image of the bread that God rained down from heaven. It like treasures just waiting to feed life into all those desert dwellers. But God wanted them to do just one more thing with that bread. Having first worked to gather it, and then saved what they needed from it, God says this. This is what the Lord commands. Let an omer of it be kept throughout your generations, in order that they may see the food which I have fed you in the wilderness, which brought you out of the land of Egypt. Well, Moses and Aaron, they take this to mean that they're going to take a portion of that food and they place it next to the tablets of the law. This food was not to be eaten, but it was to be given as an offering to their God, so that every time the Israelites came to that place of worship, the Israelites would remember God for generations to come. Now, I bet you can imagine what the Israelites' initial reaction to this was when they were starving in the wilderness, right? Scripture doesn't tell us, but we know by now that it would be a little bit uncharacteristic of the Israelites to just agree with this without at least a little bit of pushback, right? Just imagine what they must have been thinking. Is this really the smartest way to invest what God has given us? Is it the smart thing to give away our most precious and valuable resource when the need is so great? Wouldn't it be smarter to eat it instead of giving it away? After all, we won't be around to worship if we all starve to death. Is it even the right time to give this much? Wouldn't it be better to give God our resources once we've actually gotten to the land God has promised us? We get our feet firmly planted and we have a chance to earn a little bit more. Doesn't God want us to be investing in our future instead of letting it all go to rot? How exactly does giving it to God right now help us do that? If it feels like these questions resonate somewhere deep in the shadowy corners of your heart, you shouldn't be surprised. You're not alone. God's followers have been asking these questions since the very beginning. Every time we think about what it looks like to give our limited resources back to God. The Israelites, they couldn't understand how giving back to God would secure their future as a community, but God was certain that it would. Not in the way that televangelists, like Rich mentioned, promise a future of wealth and prosperity when we tithe, but in another sense. See, because every time the Israelites gathered together for worship, that omer of food would have been a visual relic, a reminder of the God who promised to be with them from beginning to end, that God was with them now. And years later, when these pangs of hunger that they were feeling had come and gone, it would remind them never to take for granted the full bellies that they feel in the moment. Oh, and that omer, it would matter years down the road when they sit with their children and their grandchildren in their places of worship, and they point to that jar of coriander seed like bread, and they give their children a story to tell, and a legacy to live into, and a future to look forward to. That omer would matter a whole lot when future generations of Israelites would go through their own trials and their own pain, when they would desperately grasp for something to hold on to, something in their faith that would give them the hope they needed to press on for one more minute, or one more day, or one more hour. See, the Israelites had no idea that what they were doing in that moment, when they gave back to God out of what God had given to them, was this: investing. Not just in their future, but in the long longevity of their common life together, and the generations that would come after them searching and yearning, and the mission to which God was inviting them all to participate. We don't always view giving, especially our tithe, as much of an investment for our future, or at least not a very wise one. Sometimes we don't give because we can't be certain that we'll see a benefit for ourselves or the community that we're giving to. Sometimes we don't give because we can't give very much. And so we're embarrassed. We think that our tiny contribution of 2 pennies or $5 or $20 doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Sometimes in this world it's easier to invest our resources and our time and our energy into the stock market or into political leaders or into self-help books or gurus because we think they might produce more tangible results for us in the long run. Now, investing in those things isn't necessarily wrong, but they can't be a substitute for giving to God. When we give to God, we don't always see the immediate return. We just have faith. We have faith that God promises that when we give, we are investing in a future that we cannot yet see. Ren and I, we're a tithing family. One of the ways that we give to God is through tithing to the church. At various points in our lives, we've tithed to nonprofits and other organizations. But one of the main reasons that we give to the church is because we believe the church is called to be a body of people who are transformed by the love of Jesus Christ. And we believe that if we each commit ourselves to living radical lives of love for Jesus Christ, if we really do that, we believe that together the church has the best possibility for transforming our neighbors and our communities and our economy and our political systems and our ecosystems until they all become a place of transformation and peace and love. We wholeheartedly believe that the church can do that. It may be one of the only institutions left that can. When we give, we don't know how God will use it. We don't always know that we'll see the way that money or that time or that energy is used. But we trust that as we give in faith, others will be blessed, that something will happen, that it is securing the future of God's kingdom and mission in some way. Wesley believed that we tithe not because we have some surefire guarantee of gaining interest in our investment. We tithe out of the generosity that God has given to us, like Rich talked about. We believe that God will use what we've given to further God's work in the world. That's why Wesley believed we should tithe. And we serve a God who throughout Scripture has reminded us that God is intent on doing a work of transformation and resurrection in our futures and in our lives and in this world. And it is a transformation that softens hard hearts and mends broken relationships and brings peace in the midst of conflict. It's a transformation that opens each of our eyes to see the people around us as brothers and sisters. It showers justice and mercy on saint and sinner alike. This is a transformation that lifts up the poor and the needy. It breaks the chains of the oppressed. It comforts the hurting and the forgotten, and it mothers the orphans and the abandoned. This is the future God is calling us to help work to fruition. And every time we give of our resources, whether it's our time or our energy or our talents or our money, no matter how big or small, whether we see the results or we don't, we believe that we are investing in that future. We're investing in the generations to come. We heard just a few Sundays ago about one congregant's generous contribution to buy this church a new piano, and that was an investment. And when that family bought this piano, they had no idea that years later that piano would become a respite. It would become become an altar, a place where one tired young pastor's spouse and seminary student would come and rest and connect with God. That piano wasn't just some musical instrument. It's a place that reminds young people of their worth and reinvigorates their call to the church and God's mission in the world. And every single time we give, we're investing. We're investing in some future blessing, in a generation to come, in the future mission